The conversation today is all about life and money. It's all about how much do you need to retire comfortably or retire early. I guess the best way to start this conversation is if we go back in time and we look at our lives from the beginning of when we start to earn money to when we can finally declare to ourselves we have enough. If I reflect on my life for a moment, my early money-making days started out as an employee. I worked casually on Elwood Beach in Victoria, selling soft drinks. Needless to say, at the age of 15, I wasn't particularly skilled, so my rate of exchange of time for money was really quite poor. But it did introduce me to the idea of what employment was. And employment is just that. It's an exchange of time for money. And over a period of years, I learnt that if I skilled up, if I specialised, I was able to create a better exchange rate. As I worked through school and then through uni, I finally got a degree as a teacher of maths, science, computer science. Having that skill allowed me to improve my rate of exchange better than that of selling soft drink cans at a beach. Well, at the age of 22, that offered me a newfound freedom. I was pretty excited. I was out of home. I was into my own car. It happened to be a 1972 white Toyota Corolla Coupe. Admittedly, it was held together by wire and rope, but it was still a car and it was mine and I had my freedom and I was pretty excited. I was out of home, life was wonderful. But over a period of years, I recognised that there's a vulnerability to employment. Given that I am exchanging my time and skill for money, it doesn't matter how skilled I become. If I can't put my time in, I'm not going to earn any money. Let me ask the question. If you were no longer able to spend time in your job, what would happen to your income? If you were no longer able to commit time as a self-employed person, what would happen to your revenue? Or if you're running a business that's still heavily dependent upon you and you are not able to commit the time, what would happen to the business? And in that, we are living with a vulnerability. So if we look at this differently and ask a different question, we might then get to see the significance of the vulnerability that we're facing as an employee, as a self-employed person, or as a business owner where the business is still heavily dependent upon us being there. What is retirement? Well, retirement is your ability to earn an income without putting the time in. So the answer to having a better life, the answer to early retirement or retiring comfortably, comes in our ability to create a system whereby we are no longer needing to exchange our time for money. So how do we do that? What's the solution? The solution is simply to build an asset base. But is there a right and wrong asset base to be building? If I had a $5 million home and no income, is this the sort of asset base that I'd want? And the answer is no. I might be living in the Taj Mahal, but I'll be living on baked beans, and that's not the life I want to live. What I'm after is an asset base that somebody else wants to use. Because if somebody else wants to use it, then they will pay me to do so. In that, I am generating an income stream. Now, if my asset base is big enough and people are willing to pay me enough, then there will come a point where I will no longer need to exchange my time for money in order to live the life I want. Before the power of this really hit home for me, I thought that my time was better spent being a better employee. So I spent my time skilling up. I spent my time learning about what it was to be a great employee, how I could be indispensable to the company, or how I could be eminently re-employable if it was that something occurred and I was no longer able to be employed in the company that I was working for at the time. And by doing that, I thought I'd mitigated the risk of exchanging my time for money, when in fact what I'd done was focus my energy on entirely the wrong thing. You see, what you think about determines the outcome of your life. Now let me see if I can explain that a bit. When I was an employee looking to be a better employee, I thought about being a better employee. As a consequence, I made decisions about being a better employee. As a consequence of those decisions, I took action to being a better employee. And as a result of those actions that I'd taken, the outcome was that I was a better employee. Goal accomplished. Except that that's not the goal I need to accomplish if I want to retire early or retire comfortably. The goal that I need to accomplish is to be better at building my asset base. And that's an incredibly powerful shift in thinking. If I begin to think differently and begin to think about being better at building an asset base, then I start to make decisions about being better at building an asset base. As a consequence of those decisions, I begin to take action to be better at building an asset base. And as a consequence of that action, I have achieved an outcome. I am better at building that asset base. And as a consequence of being better at building that asset base, I've been able to quit the rat race. Now that was a really powerful shift for me. And that is the exact same shift that's available for you. It starts out very subtly, but the impact in your life could be phenomenal. If you shift your thinking from being better at being employed, being better at being self-employed, or being better at being dependent in your business, and work on, think about, create ideas around being better at building an asset base. And if you continue to apply that focus, then you will continue to grow in your wisdom and your ability to build a phenomenal asset base. An asset base that will allow you to retire decades early or retire extremely comfortably. Let's start to make that real. And it leads into today's topic. How much is enough? So we now need to figure out how big this asset base needs to be in order to allow us to retire early or comfortably. And as with most goal achievement, it begins with the end in mind. The end here in this instance is, how much income would you be happy to live off? How much income is enough for you to retire early? Now, there are a couple of ways we can calculate this. One is to think about everything you want in your life and the lifestyle you want to live. Add up all of the costs associated in a 12-month time frame to achieve that. And that would represent what you would need to earn in a year. Another alternative might be just to pick a flat figure, like, for example, $100,000 a year. If I had $100,000 a year and no debt, that would be a fairly comfortable way to go. For some people, though, $100,000 is either too much and unrealistic or not enough, and they'd expect more. So another way that you might like to figure out how much is enough for you would be to think about what you're currently earning in a year and add a bit. So if you're on $50,000 a year, you might want to make that $55,000 or $60,000 a year and use that as your line in the sand for how much you'd like to accomplish as a passive income or an income that you're earning from your asset base. For the sake of simplicity, though, I'm going to choose $100,000 a year as our example to help do the mathematics so that you can apply the same approach to the income that you're interested in earning. Now, if we've got an asset base and somebody's willing to pay us $100,000 a year, that's going to represent a certain return on investment or rate of interest. Now, depending upon your level of sophistication and skill, that rate of interest becomes quite variable. For some, it will be 2%, some it'll be 4%, some it'll be 5%. For some, it'll be 8%, for some, it'll be 10%, for some, it'll be 12%, and for some, it'll be 20%. So I'd like you to think about what you think would be a fair and reasonable return on investment that you think you might be able to get. For me, I'm going to pick 8%. So if I'm going to earn $100,000 from an 8% return on investment, what is the size asset base that I'm after? Well, simple mathematics suggests that all we need do was divide $100,000 per annum by 8%. And in doing so, we achieve an asset-based requirement of $1.25 million. Now, as a property coach and a mentor, when I've shared this idea with people, the reaction has been quite different. For some, the reaction is just 1.25, wow, that's easy, I could do that really quickly. For others, it's 1.25, that's impossible, how could anybody achieve that? It doesn't matter what you're feeling right now around your ability to achieve that. What matters is the numbers. What matters is the goal that we're looking to achieve. So if I had $1.25 million of income-producing assets with a return on investment of about 8%, then I would be earning $100,000 a year. So if we now take your example, think about the income that you want to earn as a passive income. Think about the rate of return that you think you can get. Divide your income by the rate of return, and this will give you an idea of the asset base that you need in order to achieve that. Now, if you think that asset base is too big, then we might need to make some adjustment, and you can do so by increasing the rate of return and learning how, or reducing the amount of money you want to earn in any one year and still be comfortable. But I'd like to suggest that there is no need to be fearful about the size of the asset base that you're looking to achieve. Because as property investors, we are problem solvers. And by declaring the size of the asset base that we are after, we've just simply seen a problem. Our job now is to solve it. Well, I guess the next question then becomes, how do we achieve that? It's great to know that amount, but how do we achieve it? How do we get that much money in our bank accounts? If we're able to siphon off some of our time and some of our money so that we can spend our energy on building our wisdom, building our knowledge, being able to buy the right property, being able to follow through on our projects and our purchases, and being able to deliver a profit and an income, then we will create an asset base the size that we need. Let me ask a different question now. Where do you think your biggest risk in achieving this asset base is? Well, the idea of creating an asset base is a great idea. It is just an idea until it is a reality. And the human mind is very, very good at rationalization. So while you may be engaged in the idea of building an asset base now, it's very easy for life to push back and get in the way. In our conversation so far, we've done some maths and talked some numbers. And I encourage you now to think about your reaction during those conversations. Because again, when I speak to people on this, there are some common reasons, justifications, excuses for why they may not be able to achieve that. The first is the lack of. I don't know enough. I don't have enough money to get started. I don't have enough time. My life is full. Are those things problems? Well, yes, they are. If you don't believe you know enough, then guess what? You don't know enough. If you don't believe you have enough money, well, guess what? You don't have enough money. If you don't believe you have enough time, well, again, guess what? You don't have enough time. And therefore, for you, these things are very, very real. I appreciate that. But as property investors, we are problem solvers. So my question back to the people who raise these concerns is I don't know enough a problem with a solution? And invariably the answer is yes. There is a solution to not knowing enough. Is there a solution to the problem of not having enough money? Again, yes, there is. Is there a solution to the problem of not having enough time? Again, yes, there is. So each of these common problems do have solutions. And it taps into why you're investing. If you have a strong why, then you'll be interested in finding the solution. And you'll be keen to know what that is. If you've not tapped into why you're investing, then you might find that the size of the problem you think you're facing feels overwhelming, and therefore you stop dead. My encouragement to you is to try a process of thinking where there is no problem that doesn't have a solution. And rather than focus on the problem, focus on the creation of a solution. And in that, you get to keep going. In that, you get to continue to create. And in that, you will achieve the asset base that you are after to retire early and retire comfortably. Now, before we close off today's conversation, I'd like to raise one more alarm bell for what might get in the way for you. And that might be procrastination. Procrastination comes in many different forms. It comes in the form of distraction, or putting things on hold, or thinking about it tomorrow, or just putting it down and not persisting. Procrastination takes many, many different forms, and as an idea, I would encourage you to be vigilant, to observe yourself, watch yourself as you progress on this journey to achieving great wealth, that you are not waylaid by procrastination. Watch yourself as you get distracted. Watch yourself as things get in the way and you engage in sideline issues. Because anything that can take you away from your time to creating an asset base adds time to the creation of that asset base. So retiring early becomes less early. Retiring comfortably becomes less comfortable. To achieve what you want to achieve requires a certain vigilance, a certain persistence. And I would encourage you to take on the idea of you can have anything you want, but be persistent with it. You can have the asset base that you're after, but be persistent with it. You can have the passive income you want, but be persistent with acquiring it. Be persistent with building it. Be persistent with learning how to create that. And if you do, then you'll have a life far better than you think you can have right now. Until we meet again, invest wisely.